I was a kid buying groceries with my family in an Aldi, of all places, and I happened to see that up by the registers they had this metal shelf full of PC games, and I was of course immediately interested, being a kid obsessed with PC gaming, and I walked over there and saw this jewel case that said Nerf ArenaBlast on it, something that I'd never heard of before, and I thought, holy crap, a Nerf game. I love Nerf guns, I have several at home, well, 3 at home, and with this I could play with all of those and all the ones that I can't afford to get because Nerf guns were expensive, and this game wasn't really. So I was all excited and asked my mom, and we ended up getting it, brought it home, got super excited to play it, popped it in the computer, and our family PC couldn't run it. But about 6 or 8 months later, thereabouts, we ended up getting an upgrade that we were due for quite some time, and the first thing I did was, of course, grab the case, pop this game in, and install it, and what I actually got was not at all what I was expecting. It turns out this is actually a Nerf-themed arena shooter, which I had no idea about at the time. You see, for the last several months before this, I had been constantly over at a friend's house playing Unreal Tournament. I absolutely fell in love with Unreal Tournament at this time, so seeing that I actually had another game in this genre that I completely loved, that I didn't even know about at first, was really cool. And so goes my first experience with Nerf ArenaBlast. This game actually came out a little bit before I discovered it on the best holiday, Halloween, of 1999. And if you know your arena shooters, you might be a little confused to note that that is actually about a month before Unreal Tournament 99 came out, which was, I think, November 22nd, thereabouts. So you may be wondering, how does a game based on something come out a month before the thing that it's based on? Well, the simple answer is actually, Nerf ArenaBlast is not based on Unreal Tournament, it's actually based on the multiplayer component of Unreal Gold. But, as you would probably expect, after its release, it did share a lot of the community, a lot of maps and things with Unreal Tournament, because people that were interested in one tended to also be interested in the other. So what the heck is it exactly? Well, it is definitely an arena shooter at its core, but it does things a little bit differently because it's trying to be sort of kid-friendly, so you won't see terms like deathmatch or frags in this game. Instead, you have point blast and eliminations and the like. And the whole thing is actually presented in this fairly unique way that makes it look and feel like a game show, effectively, which actually at the time of its release was very topical, because this was a time where like the big budget Nickelodeon kids game shows like Double Dare, Guts, and Legends of the Hidden Temple were getting very popular, so having a game that presents itself in a similar way was really topical on a lot of kids' minds, including my own at the time. It was really presented like a sort of televised event, like a game show, and it made me think of those game shows that I enjoyed watching all the time, which added somewhat to its atmosphere, and is one thing that makes it stand out a lot from other arena shooters. It also has a pretty significant story, like single-player component, so story-wise, you start out as a player in the Twisters, an amateur Nerf team that's trying to work their way up the ladder to become pros. You do this by taking part in 3 different events, each against 6 different teams, and eventually making your way to the big final match. Every team has their own arena that you will do these events in until you move on, giving it, again, a very much like game show-like sort of pro Nerf tournament televised event sort of theme. The 3 events that you'll be doing are Point Blast, which is effectively deathmatch, except they can't call it that, and it involves building points by hitting and eliminating players, and whichever team has the most points at the end wins. There's also Speed Blast, which turns each map into an obstacle course filled with flags that you have to go through in a specific order from 1 to 7 faster than anyone else. And then finally there's Ball Blast, which sounds incredibly painful but is actually a sort of deathmatch-like event that involves the collection of these colored balls throughout the battlefield. You can still gain points by eliminating players, but the main focus is actually to find these balls and fire them into various targets that are placed strategically around the map. So you have to memorize where the different targets are in the maps, find the balls, make it to the targets without getting killed, because if you get eliminated you drop all the balls you're carrying, and fire them accurately into the targets to get points. And eventually, once you find the first 6 of the rainbow colored set of balls, the 7th golden ball will spawn, and whoever finds that and then fires it into the target will actually end the game, and at that point whoever has the highest score will win. One really cool aspect of this is the map design, because it also goes all in on the whole game show televised event thing, because the maps aren't just static. In fact, you'll find various targets and switches and things that you can actually shoot with Nerf guns to activate different effects on the map. There may be like point scoring targets that you can shoot to just gain some extra points for your team, but oftentimes they're in sort of hard to reach places, so you have to skill shot them effectively. You also may find some gears and switches and things that can be shot, and those can actually activate other parts of the level. For instance, there might be, say, a double damage power up or a weapon that only spawns in one place behind a secret wall that you have to open in one room by shooting one of these switches and then making it to the room that the wall opens in before it closes again. This gives each map a little bit more to learn, because not only do you have to learn the layout of the map and the spawns and everything, but you also want to learn all these secret locations and what all the switches do. So this is definitely one of my favorite aspects of the game looking back on it, because it really brings that whole game show theme to the gameplay. It makes it more than just presentation, because you actually feel like you're playing basically like an obstacle course made for kids. As far as weapons go, they're actually all real Nerf guns, starting with the secret shot, the pistol of the game, which is immediately different from the usual arena shooter infinite ammo pistol weapon in that it's not hit scan. It actually fires relatively slow moving darts, so you have to do a lot of target leading to make it work. You also have got things like the Wildfire, which is one of the blasters that I actually had as a kid, which is a rapid fire assault rifle like weapon, and the secondary function fires 10 darts in a shotgun like blast. Basically the way that it tends to work in this game is the primary fire of a blaster is how it actually worked in real life, and the secondary fire is something special. So you've also got stuff like the Nerf cannon, which is the grenade launcher of this game, firing arcing but very powerful explosive balls. You've got the pulsator, which actually works in the opposite way, where the alt fire is how it worked in real life, and the primary fire fires both barrels at once. You've got stuff like the triple strike, which is the rocket launcher of the game, and actually works very similarly to Unreal Tournament 2004's rocket launcher. You've also got the scatter shot, your classic hit scan shotgun. The Balzuka, which is your medium-range single-fire weapon. That's kind of hard to use because it fires in an arc above the target reticle, not directly at it, although the secondary fire is a bit of goo that can stop enemies in place for a couple seconds, which is very mean. You've also got the Sidewinder, which shoots bouncing discs and should be immediately familiar to you if you've ever played Unreal Tournament 99. The Whomper, which is very rare and often hidden in secret areas, but is basically the game's BFG. And the Hyperstrike, which is actually the game's railgun, believe it or not, which, to be fair, if you've ever used one of those things in real life, is actually pretty close to how they really were. Those things were dangerous. And you've also got your classic power-ups like double damage, your suit overcharge for extra health, and your mega speed and mega jump power-ups for extra mobility. It's always fun to go back to games like this and sort of mention little bits and bobs here about how the technology has changed over time. It's fun to be able to go back and play games of a previous decade or 2 or 7 and look at how technologically different limitations are no longer in place. Just as a quick example, because I think it's sort of fascinating, one of the things you might notice if you're paying attention to the weapon models in the game as they animate is that they sort of look like they're made of jelly. This is because the game used an older method of 3D animation called vertex morphing, as opposed to the much more common nowadays skeletal animation, which actually uses animation bones inside of models to animate around. This style of vertex animation was just how it was done in the earlier days, and at the time, with crispy software rendered graphics and lower resolutions, you wouldn't necessarily notice this jittering movement as easily, and it was just fairly normal. This is how it worked. But today, with our crisp, fine, high resolution and everything, we can see all these little imperfections a lot more easily, and it's what lends some older games that sort of unsettling, jittery look. It had a community around it, a pretty good sized community, and that community is the entire reason that I'm even able to show it to you today, because, as you would probably guess, a game from 1999 doesn't really work very well on modern hardware, for a lot of different reasons, so you need some sort of patch, some sort of fix, and there is a community patching tool that has been developed that actually includes a huge amount of maps and mods and mutators and all sorts of fixes and things to actually get it to work, and that's how I'm able to even run it at all, let alone at stuff like 1080p resolution and a nice frame rate. So the community had all sorts of cool stuff going for it. One of the most popular things at the time that I remember was to remix Unreal Tournament maps, because the editor for this game, the map editor, actually allowed you to pretty easily just go down like this tutorial checklist and change a map from Unreal Tournament to work with Nerf ArenaBlast. So you'll notice that a lot of the popular maps at the time were actually remixed versions of popular UT maps. There were also loads of mutators made from simple things like, low gravity and that sort of idea, to entire replacements of the weapons, from like the food fight mutator, which changes all the weapons to be like food themed, to the one that changes all the weapons to more like actual weapons, like ballistic and explosive weapons, making it even closer to Unreal Tournament. As with UT, these mutators are just a really awesome part of the experience, just modding the game with different weapon sets and different rule sets to just extend the life of the game and give it some more variety. Mutators like this are always an awesome thing, and I appreciate how many of them are included with this community package. And in fact, I really appreciate this community package in general, not just because it helps to more easily run the game on modern systems, but because I really respect the archival effort that it represents. People like to say that you can never permanently delete something from the internet, that you can't get rid of it because someone will always have a mirror, someone will always have a backup of it somewhere. And as much as we'd like to believe that's true, you know what I'm talking about if you've ever tried to play an old shooter and tried to get old maps that you remember back and discover that sometimes they're just gone. It turns out you actually can permanently delete things from the internet. It just takes time. Given enough time, maybe a decade or so, people will forget about something enough to where it can actually just vanish. And you may be sent on some sort of wild Google chase where you are going to links to old websites that you remember that no longer exist, and you're eventually linked to some old Reddit post that has an archive of different maps and folders, but it links to some defunct mega link that no longer has anything in it. And, you know, if you've ever been in this situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes trying to find old maps and mods and things, they just don't exist anymore. And this community pack represents a large collection of maps and mods that really aren't anywhere else. You know, if this download didn't exist, if this community pack was gone, then almost all of the stuff in it would be permanently gone from the internet. Like all of that community effort and time spent creating all this stuff just gone, wiped out. And I think it's always really sad. It just sucks in general to see modding scenes and things that were once vibrant get so forgotten that all of that stuff just eventually falls off and disappears from the internet. So I really respect the effort that the team creating this patch has gone through to actually preserve that stuff. It's not just about making the game work on modern systems, it's about keeping that old stuff for the modern internet that otherwise would have long ago disappeared. The community pack is also pretty cool because it works as a custom installer, effectively allowing you to install things like the map sets all custom, and even have it populate map lists with what were popular map rotations at the time, allowing you to sort of relive those old rotations. You can even have it install popular server packages, which makes the whole thing a lot more than just a tool to get it working on modern systems. But if just getting it working is what you're currently in the mood for, then it also does that very well too. Adding things like support for modern resolutions in the game, adding better field of view customization so you don't get sick while playing it, and even adding some things to the user interface like, say, a scrollable list of mutators and some other options which the game didn't originally have. It's definitely worth going back and revisiting this game because it's a pretty unique specimen as far as arena shooters go, and let's be honest, we're not going to be getting any more new arena shooters anytime soon, so going back to the old ones we used to like, or maybe have never gotten to try before, is a really good way to scratch that itch. I'm going to link you guys down below to the PC Gaming Wiki page on Nerf ArenaBlast, because if you don't know anything about PC Gaming Wiki, it is an extremely useful resource for games both old and new to help get them running, to figure out problems, and to even explain those problems to you if you don't know about them. On the wiki page, you'll see links to stuff like the 1.2 patch to get it up to date, as well as the actual community package itself that I've been talking about and where you can install that from. So if you're looking for an old experience that lets you shoot people with Nerf guns outside of Mos Eisley, then look no further than Nerf ArenaBlast and its community patch that lets you do just that. It's a fantastic old arena shooter with an equally fantastic archival project that keeps it playable in the modern day. If you guys have any ideas that you'd like to see for the next game I revisit and go back to, something obscure, something that not everyone has heard of, then feel free to leave it below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.